afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are joining from. I'm Gauri Das and I'm your host for this chat show, Factoring One Stop Solution for Your Global Aspirations. And as you know, we have two wonderful speakers joining us today talking about what's going on with the economy, where are we headed, what's happening, because every day things are changing and it's all about uncertainty today. So you are going to have answers to all your questions, but before that, let me quickly talk about India Factoring. India Factoring and Finance Solutions Private Limited offers working capital solutions through the factoring product aimed at converting your receivables into cash. The company is subsidiary of a European bank called Fimbank PLC Malta and is registered with RBI as an NBFC factor. India Factoring is also AG3 category authorized dealer. Through our global network, we offer one-stop solution around receivable finance. This is about India Factoring, and thank you once again for joining us. Now let me talk about our first speaker. Our first speaker is Dr. Arun Singh, who is Global Chief Economist, Dun& Bradstreet. Arun has worked across global quantitative and qualitative economic research, econometrics, modeling, commodity and industry research for past 2 decades. He has provided strategic advice and expertise to aid decision making within various government and private organizations. Arun's ability to connect economic insight and data and explain business implications has led to him becoming a trusted advisor and expert for media, government, and clients alike. Projects undertaken by Arun within the sphere of economic analysis and research include, it's a long list, macroeconomic research and credit risk assessment for 132 countries across segments to drive strategic input for businesses. Periodic analysis and forecast of macroeconomic variables for multiple frequencies. Business expectation optimism surveys. Industry research, providing in depth analysis on key industries along with continuous updates. Demand estimation for various industries, commodity research, customized research, and advisory solutions, and the list goes on. Yes, you heard me right. It's 132 countries. So fasten your seatbelt and be ready to know what lies ahead for the whole world. We are so glad to have an eminent personality with us today. Thank you so much, Arun, for joining us. Now it's time to invite our second speaker, Mr. Ravi Valecha, who is Chief Executive Officer of India Factoring and Finance Solutions Private Limited. Ravi is a professional banker with 20 plus years of rich and insightful experience in banking, with expertise in corporate and retail banking, business development, product development, and credit. He's a specialist in factoring and supply chain finance. He's a well-known name in field of factoring and currently leads India Factoring and Finance Solutions as its Chief Executive Officer. India Factoring is a market leader in export factoring and has consistently retained the highest market share since 2018. Besides acing his ever challenging role at India Factoring, and if he ever gets any time, he also loves to support students and young professionals by guiding them with his knowledge and wisdom. Please welcome Mr. Ravi Valecha. Thank you, Ravi, for joining us today.
Pleasure. Thank you so much.
Let's start with bombarding them with our questions. And if you want to ask anything which I am not asking, please put it in the chat box. So Arun, I would be addressing this to you first because just the way we were talking right before we went live, there is a lot of uncertainty. We do not know what lies ahead. And now even the numbers of inflation, energy crisis, for India, even the semiconductor crisis, there are a lot many things to look up to in 2022, and we do not know what's going to happen. We were talking about recovery so far, but now things look different and there is another tension to it. So, how has been economic recovery so far and how do you see it moving forward?
Thank you for that question. And in fact, that's very timely. And our assessments sometime go for a toss. And being an economist, I must admit that, if you put two economists in a room, there will be four different views. And sometimes each economist will have a two different view, and one is contesting themselves, and that's reality. And that's basically, maybe it's a part of joke, but that's reality. What's happening, if I have to take you back in, let's say, last few months of 2019, we do survey of businesses in India, and in fact businesses outside India. Various angle we ask, what they feel, what things look like, and how they should take things forward, and what are the critical factors, what are the risk and opportunity lies. One, for India, we reach out to them and ask what is the optimism look like from a economic perspective, from a demand side, from a employment side, for price side, things like that. And these are a company who are basically burning their midnight oil on the ground. So they know better than what we're talking about, 36,000 feet, sometimes research, what we call. But they know the reality better. And we reach out to them every quarter, we reach out to them. 2019 end quarter, when we reached out and we asked them what things look like, and you will be surprised, the green shoots were visible. And in fact, the recovery was very, very high. Everyone thought about the Q1 of 2020. Everyone thought there will be a multi-year high probability of economic recovery was visible at that point of time. Unfortunately, as we closed the survey and we reported the number, the first few days of January, in fact, started in the December 2019 itself, but first few days of January 2020, we all know things started shaping in different direction. And it took just one quarter to cover up entire world, and eventually we had to rise to put country into lockdown. And that things deteriorated. We went to the negative multi-year low. We have never seen such type of crisis in a century, and all those are basically history. We are aware of this one. And then we had some recovery, what we call V-shaped recovery, uh, during start of this 2021. But unfortunately, we got hit by another wave, and again recovery went into down. But there is a silver lining. There is a different things happening, and there's a different things happening across the world. What we have seen, consumer confidence. We have looked at some 36 country data last few quarters, last few months. Consumer confidence data, if you see, that's gone up. That's significantly gone up. In fact, most of the countries, if you see, that's multi-year high. And in fact, that's higher than the pre-pandemic level. So which means consumer have understood that they need to live with the virus. And back to India, we have seen that, and this indication and this parameter, high frequency parameter, if you have to see, just around a pre Omicron crisis, there are many things happening. In fact, and that proved the belief that India is now going to be the fastest growing major economy in the world in 2021, because some of the numbers still have to come out, and that's going to be for sure, because average GDP growth rate data for first three quarter of 2021 is 3 percentage point higher than the G20 country level data. In terms of improvement, that's one thing. If you look at the tax revenue, that's remained buoyant. Gross GST collection have been 1 trillion every month since July 2021. That's basically the ground reality that you cannot deny. That's not a sample. That's a reality. That's hard data. Bank credit growth data, it's gaining momentum. It's coming back to the recovery phase. Export have displayed some sign of improvement. some concern globally now with the third wave in India and then multiple waves in the world. But I think export story is going to continue. There are many challenges, no doubt about it. Those positive things are not alone. There are many challenges. Talk about the consumer expenditure, private investment, slightly slower side. Many contact intensive industries remain you know pre before I mean they have yet to reach out to the pre-pandemic level. We got Omicron crisis, and maybe there will be some confidence crisis in some time, some week, month, but things will be normal. But that's going to create a pain for at least January or February. Cost push pressure, if you see, because of the supply chain disruption, because of the China's zero COVID policy tolerance, many goods got stuck at the port level, many ships got stuck in the transit. There's supply chain issues. You're mentioning about chip shortage. That's reality. All those things, good shortages have created a pain. Energy crisis have created a pain in some of the sector, but things are improving now. Things are coming back to the normal. I think with the some precautionary measures taken by the government across countries, things are started going floating around. But this will continue to be a pain for some point of the time down the line, and this is going to impact the corporate earnings, going to impact the consumer spending, and going to impact some amount of recovery what we were expecting in, let's say, November 2021 or October 2021. Some dent will happen. Having said that, the incipient sign, the green shoots, and then some of those high frequency data will suggest that recovery is going to take place for sure. We were thinking that things will not normalize in the first quarter of 2022, but probably that might delayed by one more quarter. Things will come back to 2022 second quarter, provided there is no other concern, because things, I think people have on the ground understood to live with the virus, and there are pending demand, things coming down. This slight moderation dent in terms of my expectation of the economic recovery earlier before Omicron, but I think those are just 5-6% correction of those economic recovery, but 95% is intact in terms of the recovery process. Thank you for that question.
Thank you, Arun, and thank you for explaining how this overall research works. Otherwise, the joke goes they never came to me to check out what am I thinking. So, thanks for explaining the extensive process there, and I really love the way you explain things in terms of positivity. That yes, there are challenges and we know about it, but there are lot many signs of positivity as well, and we should look towards them and move forward. As we all know, export plays a very important role when it comes to India, and you also talked about it, Arun, that there are challenges, there are container challenges, manpower shortage. Every country has a different way of living today, and they have different norms. We don't know what's going on everywhere. So there, this crisis is looming large, and it's already there for quite some time now, and that's where exporters are facing a challenge. So, Ravi, I would come to you for this question, and I would love to understand from you that there is a boom in export. We heard about or we read about revenge shopping, which is also happening in US and Europe, and the order book looks very good. However, there is this crisis, container crisis, and shipping industry is having a good time in terms of revenue, but exporters are facing challenge. So, what are working capital options with exporters? Because this makes their overall payment cycles very, very long. So, what would be your suggestion to exporters, Ravi?
Thanks, Gauri. Thanks. Interesting question. So definitely there is, as we know, that there is a crisis situation. So I would not say that this is completely, unimaginable crisis. This was in the making even before the COVID pandemic struck in late 2019 or early 2020 as well. This took genesis in the early or mid 2019s with the trade wars looming large at that point of time. So this has a genesis somewhere at that point of time. Uh, and as you would expect from all the large corporates or the global companies who are dependent on these supply chains, there was already an initiative underway to create a parallel universe where there can be multiple supply chains being initiated. Now, definitely, it's not a something which has been created over last decade or so, can be undone over very short duration. So definitely, it is bound to take time. But as we see, it's an opportunity for India as a whole, and that's where we are seeing that there is a lot of change happening already on the ground with. India emerging as one of the key contributors to the global supply chains. We already seen the exports moving to the 400 billion plus in 3 quarters already for the financial year. And definitely there is more to come in as we progress. We have already seen the initiatives by the government on the PLIs and various other incentives being provided. So coming to the point that you see that the financial options are being what are there for the exporters. Definitely, it elongates the supply chain. The goods are lying in the ports for extended period of time. Definitely for 15 days to 30 days at bare minimum, and that elongates the payment circulation for them. And definitely there the point of factoring like products helps in, and where we end up providing the not just as a financing option at a competitive price, but also as a deleveraging exercise, because the factoring is considered as an off balance sheet, and so it's a true receivable, true sale of the receivable which is happening under factoring. And that's where it is very different from the banking lines, where it rides in banking, it rides as a debt on your book, but in a factoring it's not riding as a debt on your books, it's an off balance sheet. And so you are able to raise finance without leveraging to a great extent. uh, and what better when factoring can provide you even the collections facilities. No bank provides up the for a post shipment finance, they provide a collection facility, we end up providing as of collections also. And the icing on the cake is that we end up providing also a de-risking component, which is a credit insurance, along with the factoring part of it. So it's a non-recourse product offering that in case the buyer defaults or buyer goes bankrupt, then we are providing that coverage as well. So all in all, I would say that it's an all-inclusive product, one product to meet all the financial requirements of the customer. And that's where it's a different alternative to the customers, to the exporters, especially from India. That's the summation from my end. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ravi, for giving them a wonderful solution. Because yes, like you rightly said, it's taking long time, and ships are stuck, containers are stuck, so they need to have a solution. And thank you for offering the solution. Before we take up next question from us, there is Abhijit Angane asking to Arun. Arun, this question is for you. Abhijit says, thanks Arun for sharing rich insights. India expects to achieve its export target of $400 billion in current fiscal, the same thing that Ravi also talked about. Do you think way forward recent PLI scheme to the tune of USD 21 billion and corporate tax reforms by government would ensure India become major manufacturing hub way forward? Over to you, Arun.
So thank you for that question. I think I was expecting, to be very honest, when we talk about export, I was expecting this one because, we started this journey long time back. To be very honest, we started this journey with so-called famous, flagship program by the government of India, Make in India program, right? Make in India program. Unfortunately, there was many things. We have seen that many people had many views around that. Someone said that it's too late. Someone said that it's not going to make because I think China is leading all those back. So many things happen. I think government had many initiatives around that. They started putting some things forward, infrastructure network and your logistical chain, various corridors being implemented, and then infrastructure push started going up. Manufacturers started getting some push. Defense was one of the success story during that time. And now come here in a pandemic. To be very honest, pandemic, it's a pain, to be very honest, but the pandemic also have given us some hope to that vision of building manufacturing hub in India. What's happening in start of 2020, we looked at some of those data. across in our database who basically have a set up outside India. The global company who have their manufacturing unit not in India, outside India, and some amount of in India. We looked at those corporate companies and inquiry data they started flowing in. Uh, and there's a surprise element. Those inquiry data started flowing in to inquire about the Indian company, Indian entities more than the any other entities. And those supply chain rigidity, supply chain disruption during COVID days have really given a good incentive to global manufacturers or global companies to realign their thought about thinking about having a new what you call new country where they can set up the plant, and you can see some of those movement happening already, and there's some discussion happening on that front. So uh, so and this is the right time why I'm saying your Indian initiatives is now matched by the global aspiration of coming and setting up the plant. India is a great market because India not just have the cost advantage in terms of those manufacturing costs, also the great market like the China and the US. Now US is tapering out. There's a demand, flattening out. China's again demand is flattening out. You can see some of those elements, which means it's matching up with what India's expectation as well as what's happening globally. So I believe those vision what government is trying to set up is going to fulfill for sure. It's just the time matters. Some of those some of those gray areas, some of those critical areas which needs to be addressed quickly has to be taken care of now with the PLI scheme, with some other ease of doing business, some of the other promotion scheme in order to attract those global counterpart and have and sell here it's reality. It's a matter of time. I think that's a good vision and is going to help for sure. This time, I think this is going to be a successful story. I hope that answer your question, Abhijit.
Thanks, Arun, and thanks, Abhijit, for asking this question because what Arun explained, it really brought out the advantages that we have and the silver lining that we see. And when he said it's just a matter of time and we will be there, it was amazing. Thank you so much, Arun. And before we take up another questions for Arun, I would like to go to Ravi and ask him his view on the similar lines that what are the unique advantages that India has when it comes to export, and as China slows down, what do you think India would become exporter of the choice for the world, and how is it going to happen? Over to you, Ravi.
Perfect. Yeah. Thanks so much. I'll go with an example in hand. Okay. China is a net importer of raw cotton. So even though it is one of the largest apparel manufacturers as an industry, as an example, it is an importer of the raw cotton, and India is one of the largest growers of the raw cotton. So definitely, I see that sort of an integration being there. There is definitely an industry in India which is huge on apparel, but obviously it is not amongst the top three countries. Possibly China, Vietnam, and Bangladesh are the ones who have capitalized to a very, very great extent on this segment. But India is no behind in this, and definitely with the pandemic, what we have seen in the and having met the customers and got to know directly from the manufacturer exporters, there is a lot of demand flow now being directed to India as well. What India needs to do more like is that the PLI schemes, all those things are beneficial, but we need to have something under one, I would say, roof. What is there in China or in Vietnam or in Bangladesh is that a buyer comes from across the world. He looks for various things under one roof or one particular area. Now, for many things, today, for some segments, he has to go to Ludhiana in apparel. Some things he has to go to Tirupur, or something he has to go to some other place. What we need to do is that bring all these things under one roof or one area where these can be done. And likewise for similar other industries also, we need to bring that sort of a capability. Definitely, there is a huge improvement in the infrastructure already being there, but definitely there is a lot of scope more if India is to seize that sort of an opportunity and capitalize on becoming one of the key supply chain manufacturers or key supply chain providers in the world, apart from China. Definitely, the global move is there that India provides a stable economy, a diversified economy where multiple things can be produced. It has a huge shoreline also, so exports can happen from the various ports which we have across India. So huge advantage. There is a huge population diversity is also there. Demographic support. There is a huge labor being there because many of these can be labor intensive, and definitely there is immense availability of labor in India as well with a huge population. These capabilities being there, definitely it's all and Arun will correct me if I'm wrong, that there is a demographics also support, which is in the working age part of also the huge population being available within the working age. So that provides an incentive for the customers, for the global manufacturers to look at India as a definite another option to provide the global supply chain. The another important segment which is fast emerging is on the ESG components, which is economic, social, and other demographics part of it, which is governance part of it, which is now a need, or compliance needs are more getting stronger. Sustainable finance is also getting stronger. So from that point of view, also, if you look at it, India provides, having looked at many customers from in these segments, they end up hiring or having labor from, many of them have women as labor, many of them have less impoverished people. So financial inclusion is also there. Compliance is taking a huge requirements. So many things are there and taking shape now, which will provide immense opportunity for India to capitalize on all these segments and become one of the key exporters in the world, supplying the global chains. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Ravi. And what I'm taking away from here is it's a globalized world. So there is interdependency that is always going to be there. And second, we are young nation, but we need to raise our game. So we are young, but we need to be more agile is what your message is. And third thing, which is very close to my heart, and what you mentioned about women being supported. So when I visit and see that India factoring is supporting directly or indirectly to those women, I feel really proud. So thank you so much for bringing up sustainable finance here, Ravi. And we will go back to audience question. And here is one for Arun again. Arun, Puneet would like to understand what is your view on effect of commodity prices and inflation going forward on Indian economy. So, thank you, Puneet, for raising this question because it's not only for businesses; it's for individuals also, and we know how it pinches when things change. And today, WPI is at around 14% plus, and it's more than 10 years plus that it has happened. Though CPI still remains within the targeted range of RBI, but we never know petrol price hike crisis, this new variant, so many things around, and we don't know where do are we headed with inflation. So, Arun, your views on that?
Yeah, thank you, Gauri, and thank you, Puneet, for asking that question. And it's again very important and critical question. I think you know the researchers, third party, government, and the policy maker, they always struggle and they have a dilemma of managing those inflation trajectory, interest rate trajectory, and then capital flows, and then your economic GDP. So there's a basically dilemma we have, what we call triangular. Uh, you do something, something will get disturbed automatically. Today was happening. Another angle got added because of all those pandemic, supply chain crisis. Now, supply chain crisis is basically have added what we call the input prices. We already had a problem earlier in terms of the inflation, that input prices got elevated because the availability, the simple demand supply mismatch. Earlier in 2020 and 2021, some part of that demand was basically, I would say, was not that great, that was not that high. So lower supply, lower availability of goods had no impact because there's no demand. But today, fortunately, from a demand side, uh, demand is going up. So there's a demand for the commodities, demand for the goods, that's gone up. Unfortunately, from a supply side, still taking time. And if you see a few months back, as you were saying, and Ravi just alluded to this one, the supply chain on the container, those shape getting stuck, That's a created a pain. So there's a cycle, and there's a ripple effect of this unavailability of goods on time to the commodity price and the inflation and the economy, and that's actually gradually shaping up. Today what's happening, by the time we we saw that there is a demand recovery happening in the economy, and then there's a supply gap, your inflation gone up, but all of a sudden globally if you see, there's some sudden, there's some crisis started from the demand side as well. Not that high because of, as I said, that consumer have started understanding that COVID will not create a. I mean, they have to live with the COVID, which means not going to create a more pain. But supply side crisis is likely to stay here for some time. Now, what is impact of that on a company and the Indian economy? That's not good, because when you're growing at a rate, then that's go gets add to the uh, you know what you call demand of the economy. The problem here is the cost push inflation, which is not a demand pull inflation, which means it's not driven by the demand. It's just because the unavailability of the goods across the geographies are creating pain. Now, as long as that availability are rectified, this continue, which means going to take a drag on the most of the company. If they are able to pass their price hike of input in the form of higher prices, then it's great, or else they have to get their margin squeezed, and that's happening. And which means, if demand does not pick up in Q1, Q2 and Q3, the profit margin of the corporate is going to get squeezed, and that will result in their resilience power of holding on those profit margin. Smaller player might have a significant risk of, in fact, some of them will have a significant risk of getting wiped out from the market. Some will have to hold on, which means next 3 quarter, if supply chain is not improved on a planet, next 3 quarter looks like a era of a lower profitability across the sectors, especially the manufacturer who basically dependent on the raw material, and they are not able to increase the price. And high demand sector, where irrespective of the crisis, irrespective of uh, demand, the demand will continue to grow, whereas then the manufacturer of those goods will be able to pass a higher price to those consumer. Example, chemical, pharmaceutical, that will continue to, which means the consumer has to fear the get the brand. So this 3 quarter is very tight rope for the central government, for the government, for the companies, to central government, RBI, and the company to channelize their energy to manage inflation without impacting interest rate, without impacting the lending facility of the bankers, because one way of central bank to control the inflation is to hike the interest rate. They can't do that because we're still in the nascent stage of the recovery. Any action taken by the RBI today in order to control the inflation by hiking interest rate is a counterproductive. It's going to make a recovery impossible. So there's a fair question, I think, but answer. Sorry, I've given a very very wide, very detailed explanation, but that give a perspective that's there's no straight answer, in the sense there are many stakeholder. How the stakeholder react is going to shape the recovery path. The biggest stakeholder here is RBI. We have to see what RBI does, what government does in order to control those pieces. Eventually, end of the day, company is going to face those lower profitability next 3 quarters. Thank you for that question.
Thanks, Arun, for explaining it so well and bringing up this triangle. And what I understood from all of it, that it's not demand-driven inflation; it's shortage of supply-driven inflation. So any manufacturers, any exporters, if they are holding on things, if they are manufacturing too much, maybe it's time for them to have a relook, as advised by Arun, that it may become very very difficult for you to sustain tomorrow, because if these challenges, supply side challenges, are resolved, then maybe the price hike that they are getting now may not be there. So be careful about this, and listen to what Arun just said. With this, I would take up another question, and again, it is for you, Arun. Vinod wants to know which industry, according to you, may have severe impact with emergence of third wave. With this frequent distribution disturbance, manufacturers, exporters, financiers, and bankers, where should be the focus on which businesses and which geographies?
So again, very very important, very critical question. So this also depends on the various area, various geographies where various countries we operate. See, third wave we are talking from a India perspective, but if you look at from outside India perspective, there's multiple waves. Globally, we have a fourth or fifth wave. US, for example, last 5 6 months, if you have to see the number, they never came down. They never came down, and that was not that was not a just third wave. That was a multiple wave. I think that's gone up. Now, silver lining here is a vaccination rate. Now, vaccination rate, if you see, uh, and if I have to look at the data, I was looking some of the data. I've looked at some 110 countries data where we have vaccination data and we have the hospitalization data, ICU data, and then death rate. What we have seen, there's a high number of vaccination rate in the countries. The death rate and ICU is very low, very low. In fact, they have never seen that such a low rate. And there are countries where the vaccination rate is lower, the death rate and other things are very high. These are the perception is not these are the data points, not new to me, is not new to you. Everyone is aware and the people are aware now. People now understood after third wave the importance of the vaccine that taking care of. Government and the policy maker and those are basically coming up with those lockdown or restrictions guidelines. They realize that putting economy into the lockdown is not going to help anybody. Those protocol will be there and things like that. So I think in the third wave, I don't see that government is coming up with a severe lockdown which is going to impact the manufacturing, export, or business activity across the sector. There are some of the sector, contact intensive sectors, hospitalities, entertainment, that continue to be impacted, and that was the first wave, that was second wave, and third wave, because those sectors, to be very honest, are or to put it differently, they are going to contribute to the what you call COVID surge if they are operating fully at a full capacity. So the government is cognizant of that fact, and then industry owner of those sectors are also cognizant of that fact, and so which means we know there's no point in getting into this one. Some of them is going to face really trouble after the third wave, because I think first wave they survived, second wave somehow they managed, third wave there is a balance sheet problem for sure. So I think that is a area we should be careful. I think what today, the irrespective of third wave, the significant surge in the infrastructure activity across across countries, across geographies. IT segment is looking productive. The work from home is going to be the new normal, or hybrid model is going to be the new normal. We all know that one. There is a service provider to this sort of area. See, look at this today. I don't know. We are so many people are connected, and everyone is a different region, different location, different places. But we are talking each other. Couple of years back, that was reality. It's very high frequency event, or very a very high type of event. But now it's a reality that schools are functioning at a home level. Those service provider into those are working in those industry area is going to be a profitable. That's fine thing. More important, and then as a business trend at the global level, if I have to basically talk about what I can see, the supply chain disruption, supply chain in a near shoring. When I say near shoring for exporter, this is great scope, because I think they're going to get global support, which means in terms of setting up a planet, the goods are available at at a near door, because I think global companies are going to put up a new manufacturing hub in various sectors, and we have seen those happening. When we talk about automobile, talk about IT manufacturing, I think government of India just talking about those chip manufacturers, something in India, and those are the sectors are going to change the 2022 onward. those are the trend going to change 2022 preferences. India is great in that location, because if I have to look at those COVID data across region, sometimes some country all of a sudden emerge as a COVID hub, and we have seen in India as well. Second wave, not COVID hub at all, but in third wave, some things coming. Oh, even that city is coming in. Regional wise, no one is immune, no one is isolated. That will continue to be that. But I think these are some of the industrial hub. These are some of the industrial sector. These are some of the industrial what do you call trends we are watching in 2022 and going to help uh, bankers, manufacturers, financiers to focus on that particular area. Thank you for that question.
Thanks, Arun, for explaining it in detail. And yes, it's extremely unfortunate that some of those industries have really suffered. And like you rightly said, this third time may be extremely difficult for them to survive now. So it is very, very unfortunate. But yes, rightly said, this aids to whatever is negatively impacted by COVID already. So government also needs to be very, very cognizant about it. And every stage of this crisis is this pandemic, and like Ravi said in the beginning, it's endemic now. We need to keep learning new skills, and that's how industries will survive, managers will survive, and businesses will survive, because no business works without people. And you brought up very good points about how the future of work or future of workforce is going to be. Thank you so much, Arun, for this, and thanks, Vinod, for bringing this question. So, Ravi, you very recently created an amazing acronym about this learning agility and bringing up new things. So, we would love to know that from you, because that would be useful for people to take to form their strategies. And we would also like to understand from you. It's time for halwa ceremony for budget, and soon budgets would be announced. What is your expectation as a as a CEO of NBFC? What should government do in the budgets?
Yeah. So budgets apart, the acronym which I came about. So it has a background to it. So today we were supposed to have today, that is 7th of January, we were supposed to have our corporate event in Mumbai with an annual office get together that was planned somewhere in the good times, somewhere in end of November or so. We had planned something today. Uh, Come possibly a week back, the world changed over again, and that's where we had to reshuffle our complete scenarios and postpone that corporate event also. And that's where I said that the 4 days of the early January is something which changed the world completely, and that's where we need to be so agile nowadays, that we have to that is the 3 A's, which we need to accept the reality and adapt to the change and then accept. So until and unless you do that, change and accepting and thereon moving on, you wouldn't survive. So coming to the budget part of it, definitely there is lots more. I think the reforms have been there. There have been PLIs. There have been multiple other reforms. The couple of other initiatives which were seen through last year also in the budgets were the amendment of the Factoring Act, and specific to the industry. I'm being very specific to the industry, that there were amendments to the Factoring Act. And likewise, there has been change. The credit insurance has been opened up in India now for the bankers and the financial institutions. However, we continue to await the RBI regulations, which were also expected to be changed in line with those changes and the reforms being done. So we do expect that changing things to be coming in as well. The positive things was also has happened is that now the NBFCs, non-bank finance companies, have also been more or less attuned to the bankers. So the governance framework is there, everything is there, and I'm sure that likewise more reforms will continue to be there. More investment opportunities are going to be created, and definitely the government is going to be more accommodating or balancing, I would say, not only accommodating, because as Arun mentioned, that there is a balance which is required. Too much accommodation, inflation, too much other stance, it leads to the other scenario. So it needs to be the right balance which is required. As regards the reforms and the investments and other things, we have seen the privatizations happening on the PSUs front, and likewise other things which will happen. So definitely there are going to be more reforms, more investment opportunities in India, and hopefully more growth initiatives being done, which will see us through for typically in these government in these difficult times. From bankers' point of view, I don't see a challenge as well, because RBI has been more than accommodative in supporting the SMEs specifically who were affected in the first wave we saw, the second wave we saw, and I wouldn't be surprised if this third wave also people, the regulators will be more accommodative and supporting to see through this. I would say a shorter period compared to the earlier waves. I definitely expect a much shorter wave in the third wave this now. So hopefully, starting the year on a positive note, despite the hiccup being thrown by the pandemic, and hopefully the last of it. So that's it from my end. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ravi, for bringing up three A's, and may all your wishes are granted by our finance minister. So, Arun, coming to you, and the same question to you: what are your expectations from budget?
Thank you. Thank you so for that question. And I know Ravi covered a lot, but I think, and this is surprising. Just said that first 3 4 days have changed what we're thinking about. So if you reach out to the people in December early, that expectation of the budget was different. Now the budget, my expectation will be different, but something remain, constant, and that's not going to be changing. So I will talk about those constant things, because there will be some expectation, oh, how I can get support from the third wave as well. Those expectation will be loud and clear. But I think what I've seen last few years, government have made effort to make budget as a one, as a normal event, rather than a grand event what it used to be earlier. That's a change we have seen, and I think we all have noticed some of those sign they have done. Still they do some announcement during that, uh, and most of the announcement are done outside budget sometime. But this budget is really indicative which direction we are trying to move, and what basically uh, and those, trendsetter, the trendsetter, if you look at uh, consumption expenditure, private investment, that the area is what basically need a push from the, somehow they need to come up with something which support consumption expenditure and private investment. Because if these two things are not taken care of, your recovery of economy, a more sustainable basis, is just illusion. That's not going to happen in a reality. you know it will be very critical to stimulate demand through the tax intensive incentives, and some other measures to achieve those sustainable high growth number. Now, one of those more important part, I was looking at some of the data fact last few months. The cumulative infrastructure investment requirement up to 2050, if I have talked about 30 year later, will be around 4 times of India's current GDP, which means look at those expectations. And this is what basis the requirement. This is nothing going to take India into the higher growth trajectory, because we are growing in a direction, we are developing economy. There's a need of infrastructure sustainability. So that's a required. Now, looking at that element, when I talk about infrastructure piece, I think there is a tone to set up infrastructure investment in that way that they continue to support. And they set up last few years. Every time if you see there is a budget, huge budget, assigned to that, and they have taken care of this one. So there are many initiatives government have taken in the historically, but there's a need to provide a dedicated thrust, and what I can say, the making it permanent, carved in the stone type discussion, that the next 30 years is just going to be the infrastructure growth story, nothing else, because that's required. Why? I think just we were talking about the earlier. Now, if we want to replace the China from the global manufacturing hub, and we want to be emerge as the global manufacturing hub, those narrative has to be built in, and we have seen it globally after pandemic, supply chain realignment happening. So we need to build those manufacturing hubs in the pockets. PLI scheme is great, Now, the success of the PLI scheme depend on how successfully we are implementing those elements. So, the creating those manufacturing hub across the geographies within India, sectors identification and promoting those element, and not just promoting, also providing those hand holding to the smaller player, mid-sized player, because those are the economic engine, but they are most trouble today, and related element. So I think in a short story there are many expectation, but just to bring into some of the couple of conversation, a couple of some pointed expectation is tax incentive to promote consumption, dedicated framework for infrastructure for last next 30 years, support of the vision of global manufacturing, a global manufacturing hub, and create those framework to attract global manufacturers in India and identify those sectors where they want to basically put up those elements. These are the things we are expecting, and I think we can see some traction around that piece in the budget as well. That was my expectation, Gauri. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Arun and Amit, to all of this. As we are reading that India would become the third largest economy in the world by 2031. So we wish and we hope that this budget propels us there even before the 2031 deadline. Thank you so much once again. There are questions from Parmanandan and Vinod. Because of paucity of time, we would not be able to take it. But Ravi and Arun, they are promising that they will come back to you and they will respond to their questions, to your questions. Thank you so much, Parmanandan and Vinod, for raising your questions. And thank you so much, Arun and Ravi, for joining us today. It was really wonderful knowing what's going around. And Arun, your experiences definitely enlightened our viewers, our audience. And Ravi, your mantra also is going to help people have a right strategy framework. Thank you so much, both of you, for being with us today.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Pleasure to be there.
Thank you.
So here was Arun and Ravi helping us understanding what's going on in the economy and what action you should take to move forward. And here were we coming back with this chat show. So it's time to take your leave. If you want to know about more about India Factoring, you can go to our website or you can go to our YouTube channel or LinkedIn page. Thank you so much for being with us, and we will be back soon.